Hello students, good morning. I am your educator Dolcy and today we are going to start the next chapter from our syllabus, that is the living world. It is the chapter number 1 from unit first. So as its name implies, the living world. In this we will discuss about the living world, what are living beings first and how they exist in the world, what is the rate of their extinction, what is the rate of their appearance, how we can conserve the biodiversity and other kind of factors. So as we can see here, the questions will be, or the topics will be, what the living is, how can we say that this type of organism is said to be living or this is said to be non-living, which kind of living organism are found on the earth, that is said to be the diversity, different type of taxonomic categories and the taxonomic aids. So I hope, as you know, everything around us that can occupy space and that has mass is said to be the matter. On the basis of that matter, the material is of two kinds, matter is of two types. First one is abiotic and second is one to be a biotic, or we can say first is said to be the living and second is said to be the non-living. Non-living is that there are some, actually there is no that kind of demarcation that we can say this is living or this is living from the first day. Sometimes we were confused about that plants are living or not. Sometimes we consider other kind of factors also, that insects, worms, and bacteria, etc., virus, that these are living or not. Then with the passage of time, there are some demarcating characters were characterized by some of the scientists, or the under the specialization of a number of scientists, they characterize some of the characters, and if the organism express those characters, then it will be considered as living, or if those characters are not present, then the thing is said to be the non-living. So those characters are, so here as it is written that when we try to define a living, we usually look at some of the characteristic, as if these characters are shown by the organism, it is considered as living. So those characters are growth, reproduction, ability to sense to environment, and then elicit a specific kind of response to any kind of change. And I think the most suitable type of character to characterize a organism as a living is its ability to respond. Next is the most important feature then, which were added later, that are metabolism, their ability to replicate. Self-replicate means to increase their number. Self-organize interaction, as you know. For example, in our body also, we have number of cells. We have clusters of tissues. We have number of organs. All the cells interact to form tissue. All the tissues interact to form organ. All the organs interact to form organ system, and all the organ systems then finally interacted to give rise the reactions of a living organisms. So in this chapter next, all these characteristics are defined one by one. First one is all living organisms grow. Growth means the increase in mass and increase in number. These are two characteristics when we say the organism is growing or it is a kind of growth. So increase in number means the division of cell, and increase in mass means the increase in volume of the cell. So as you know that in plants the division occurs only at the meristematic tissue, but that meristematic tissue is active throughout the life, while in animals we observe the growth only during the certain age limit. But it doesn't mean that cells are not dividing or they are not growing. The growth and repair of the cells and tissue occurs throughout life. So unicellular organisms grow generally by the cell division. So we can observe those kind of divisions very well under the microscope. But as the increasing complexity, as we are moving from unicellular to multicellular organism, there are complexity of growth and other kind of characters. So finally someone told or asked about that if you are talking about growth as a characteristic of living, so the boulders, the dust clusters, and the sand mounds and mountains, they also exhibit growth. They increase in size with the passage of time. So the answer for this is that mountains, boulder and sand molds, they grow, but they grow externally by accumulation of materials on their surface. And in living organism, the growth is internal. So if the growth is internal or it is induced from the inside, only then it will be a living organism, or it will be the characteristic of a living organism, because it is completely determined that a dead organism can never grow. A living organism, other than a living organism, for example non-living organism, they can never express the internal growth. So the growth is the characteristic feature only of the living organism. Next characteristic is the reproduction. Reproduction is nothing, it is to produce the organism or the offspring less or more similar to the parent. Means if we are a parent, then our offsprings must be similar to us, more or less in features. So whether the sponges, whether the fungi, whether the bacteria, and whether the human beings and animals and plants, all kind of organism, they reproduce and give rise to new organism to make their species survival. In those, it is necessary that to maintain the progeny or to maintain the population, the necessary point is the reproduction. So up to that limit it was considered that okay, that reproduction is the characteristic feature of living. But after this it was asked that some organisms which are produced by cross fertilization between two different species, inter hybridization, for example mules and hinnies and worker bees and some other human couples which are just incapable to reproduce, they can't reproduce, they are unable to produce offspring, so how they can be considered as living? Or if the reproduction is the characteristic, so these should be considered as non-living. But as you know, human is living, so the reproduction is not considered as a defining feature of the living organism, because exceptions are there. There are some organisms which are living but they do not express any kind of reproduction. Next and the most important characteristic of a living is its metabolism. Metabolism is nothing, it is the sum total of all the chemical reaction occurring in an individual to make its survival possible. These can be of two types, anabolic activities and the catabolic activities. Anabolic means synthesis of the new compound, and catabolic involves the breakdown of the complex processes, that is in the form of digestion. So for maintenance of both unicellular and multicellular organisms, metabolism is necessary, which is not shown by the non-living organisms. So it is the characteristic feature of the living organisms. And as you know, the non-living matter is formed of atom, molecules or compound, can never be formed of cells. So the cellular organization of the body is the defining feature of living organism. I hope you have done this, that cell is the basic structural fundamental building block of your body and life. Okay, so life is possible only at the level of cell. So cellular organization is considered as the defining feature of the life. Last one is the consciousness. Consciousness is the capability to respond to any kind of stimuli, whether it is induced by environment or by your body. All the organisms, whether living or plant or animals, we respond to abiotic as well as biotic factors, and are this response or sense to environment via using sense organs. Every organism have different kind of sense organ depending upon the type of species which we are considering, but we are always capable of responding to the stimuli, so we are considered to be the living. So consciousness is the defining property of the living organism. But it's also a question till date that the organism which are on ventilator or in coma, they are just unable to respond to any kind of stimuli. So should they be considered as living or non-living? Think about it. Next is, as I have done in the start of this lecture, that is, it is necessary that at every level of organization in your body, starting from cell up to organ system, and from your body in the ecosystem, means between the individual, between two different populations, between two different species, between two different communities, between two different biomes. At every level there should be interaction between one and other component of the life. If there is no interaction, there will be no life. So in biology we will primarily deal about the interactions of the living organisms on earth, and in this we will deal how these organisms evolve on earth, starting from the simple up to the complex, and how this complex biology is maintained till death on the earth. So it is the genetic material which is responsible for the expression of the characters, and which relates the diversity present on earth, whether present, whether past, or whether it is assumed to be present in future. All the life forms present on earth are connected with each other and they show interactions. So today we will start up with the next chapter. Today the lecture was about the characteristics of a living organism. Thank you.